They said no woman could outshoot a Navy SEAL, no matter how many medals she had, no matter how many years she had trained in the shadows. They said the battlefield was a man's domain, a place where steel nerves and testosterone ruled, where the best of the best wore tridents on their chests and sneers on their faces. But when the female sniper raised her rifle that day, with the arrogant commander's laughter still echoing in her ears, the bullet she released was not just metal and fire, it was defiance, history, and justice wrapped into one. If you think you've seen stories of soldiers before, think again. This isn't just another military tale. It's about a woman who carried secrets darker than war itself, a commander who thought he knew everything, and a shot that rewrote their destinies forever. Stick with this story until the very last word, because trust me, you will not see the final twist coming. And if you're the kind of reader who loves tales of grit, betrayal, and redemption, then hit that subscribe button right now, because stories like this, stories that grip your heart and refuse to let go, only get better from here. She had grown up in silence, in the shadows of wars that never officially existed, in towns where walls carried bullet holes instead of children's drawings, and in nights when sleep was only broken by the rattle of machine guns or the echo of mortars that seemed like thunder tearing through the earth. And while other children learned lessons from classrooms, she learned them from ruins, from the cold instructions of a father who was less a man and more a phantom. A soldier whose past was erased from history, but whose knowledge of killing and surviving remained sharper than any blade. And so, by the time she was a teenager, she could read the wind with her eyes closed, calculate bullet drop without looking at charts, and tell the difference between calibers by sound alone. And that strange education carried her into a woman who existed on no official record, a ghost wearing flesh, a sniper who had been trained outside the boundaries of any known military, carrying skills that were unexplainable even to those who believed they had seen everything. So when she finally stood on American soil, wearing the patch of a contractor and not of a soldier, she was met not with welcome but with suspicion, especially when she was assigned to a Navy SEAL unit commanded by Rourke, a man forged from arrogance and battles, a man who believed no one could match the sharpness of his men, let alone a woman whose file was incomplete and whose past seemed too clean to be true. And when he first saw her, he measured her with the cold sneer of superiority, amused, dismissive, convinced she was decoration, a mistake, another civilian forced onto a field she could not endure. But his arrogance only thickened when the mission brief arrived. A near-impossible assignment to eliminate a high-value target hidden deep in a compound, ringed with mercenaries, in a land where they had no right to operate. A mission that required a shot no one wanted to take, and when she volunteered, silence filled the tent because everyone knew the odds. Yet she did not volunteer for approval or respect. She volunteered because everything in her life had been leading to this moment. And Rourke laughed, asking with venomous disbelief, "Who trained you?" As though, no matter the answer, it could not measure against the weight of his trident. And though her eyes flickered with storms, he could not understand. She said nothing, because she knew silence would cut deeper than excuses. And so that night when she lay in the dirt, her body pressed against the earth, her pulse slowed to the rhythm of a clock, her rifle an extension of her breathing, her scope narrowing the entire world into the fragile line of a single window. She ignored his stare, ignored the skepticism that hung like smoke around her, and pulled the trigger with a calm born from years of training no man in that unit could even imagine. And the bullet traveled through wind and darkness and space until it found its mark with surgical certainty. The target collapsing before his guards even knew where death had come from. And in that single moment the mission was complete, the impossible achieved, and Commander Rourke, who had mocked her only hours earlier, froze in disbelief, stunned into silence because he had just witnessed something that shattered his understanding of what skill truly meant. And though the compound erupted in chaos, though the air filled with the shouts of men scrambling to react, her shot had already ended the mission before it had truly begun. And when Rourke looked at her again, he did not speak, because there was nothing left to say. Yet the truth was that the shot did more than kill a target. It awakened ghosts she had buried, ghosts of her father, of secret wars, of a past that would not stay hidden. And though no one in that unit knew it yet, the woman he had sneered at was about to become the one person he would need to survive. Because her training had not come from any school they could name, it had come from places darker, older, and far more dangerous than they could ever imagine. The aftermath of that mission changed everything, though no one admitted it out loud. Rourke no longer mocked her openly, but his silence carried a different weight now, a mix of respect and unease. Because the question of who trained her did not fade, it only deepened, spreading through the unit like an infection of curiosity and suspicion. And as they moved from one classified assignment to another, whispers grew louder, each successful shot, each impossible escape, each uncanny instinct she displayed, making even hardened operators wonder if she was more than human. And though she never spoke of her past, fragments slipped through, movements too precise to be military standard, reflexes too sharp to be taught in academies, decisions too ruthless for someone without scars etched into their soul, until finally Rourke confronted her again, not with mockery this time, but with something sharper. The demand for truth, and still she said nothing, for her silence was not weakness but armor, because hidden behind it was a secret that, if spoken, could unravel not only her cover, but the very mission they were on. A secret tied to wars the world had buried, and to a man whose name had been erased, yet whose training still lived on through her hands. And though she believed she could keep it locked away, the shadows she carried were already stirring. And soon even the commander who doubted her would realize that enemies were not only outside their wire, they were buried in her past and already closing in. The days that followed became a battlefield of their own, not just against the enemies they hunted, but against the truth pressing harder with every mission. Because her skill could no longer be dismissed as luck or rare talent, it was too consistent, too exact, the kind of precision that spoke of a training so brutal, so secret, that even the SEALs had no language for it. And while the rest of the unit began to quietly accept her presence, Rourke's mind refused to settle, his pride gnawed by the possibility that a woman outside his command hierarchy might actually surpass him. Yet at the same time, his survival instinct told him she was no ordinary asset, but something far more valuable. And it was during a mission in the mountains, under freezing winds and enemy fire that cut the air like whips, when he finally saw what set her apart. An ambush shattered their formation. Men scattered, and in the chaos she moved like she had already seen it happen before, predicting angles, eliminating threats with shots taken in seconds that others would have missed even with time, dragging wounded men to cover with strength that came from relentless endurance. And in that brutal night her past slipped out, not in words, but in actions. Actions that revealed she had been trained not just as a sniper, but as a survivor of merciless war zones, where hesitation meant death. And when the dust cleared and they regrouped, Rourke stared at her differently, shaken by the realization that this was not a soldier built by the system he worshipped, but someone built outside of it. Someone shaped by a man whose name he had heard only in rumors, an infamous ghost trainer known in whispers by special forces, a man believed dead, who had once been hunted by governments for knowing too much and teaching too dangerously. And now his legacy was standing in front of him in the form of this woman, whose silence was not defiance, but protection of a truth too dangerous to expose. And though she refused to confirm it, the truth was already written in her every move. And Rourke felt something he hadn't in years, fear not of her, but of what it meant if the world discovered her existence. Because men trained like her were not meant to serve flags, they were meant to topple them. And as the mission escalated into darker territories, with enemies closing in on intelligence leaks, the commander began to realize that the woman he had mocked might not only be the reason they survived, but also the reason he would have to question everything he thought he knew about loyalty, control, and who the real enemy truly was. The final mission came like a storm, sudden and merciless, an assault where every plan unraveled and survival hinged on instinct alone. And it was there, amid smoke, gunfire, and betrayal from within, that her secret finally tore free. Because the enemies they faced were not strangers at all, but men once trained by the same ghost who had forged her. Soldiers shaped by her father's ruthless methods now turned mercenaries, hunting the very skills they once shared. And as the compound burned around them, Rourke watched her unleash everything she had hidden, moving with a deadly grace that no academy could ever teach, eliminating threat after threat with a precision that silenced even the doubts still lingering in his chest. Until at last, the leader of the enemy squad sneered the same words Rourke once had, "Who trained you?" And she answered not with silence this time, but with a single shot that ended the question forever. The echo of it rolling across the battlefield like judgment itself. And when it was over, when smoke cleared and bodies lay still, Rourke stood stunned, not sneering now, but knowing he had witnessed something rare and terrifying. A soldier beyond systems, beyond chains. Someone who carried a legacy darker and sharper than any SEAL creed. And though she walked away without explanation, leaving her past as sealed as her file, the commander understood that some questions are answered not by words, but by the kind of shot that rewrites history. And he knew then that he would never ask her again.